Brilliant. That's the way. See, Phil is representing the normal people out there who are law-abiding citizens who care about their fellow man. The rest of us are the people who go into supermarkets and breathe on people because we are not sheep.
I'm just trying to socially distance from myself.
Sheep. Phil is here. Paul Bennett is here. Do we still say of League Weekly for the moment?
Yeah, well, I mean, technically they still employ me. We are still a company that is active, albeit not printing right now, but hopefully we'll be back at some point.
That's what we want to hear. And our special guest today, joining us live all the way from Sheffield, is not John Davidson because he's still been held hostage by, I think, now Toronto fans and the right wing of Twitter. It's the general manager of Sheffield Eagles, Liam Claffrey. Liam, how are you?
I'm very well, sir. It's been I know we've planned this for a while, so it's finally happening. I think furlough and COVID has sort of brought it all to a head, which is good to be here.
I think we were supposed to get you in last year. Last February, and never got round to it for many and various reasons. So thankfully you're here now. Well, before we get on to yesterday's games, we'll just briefly talk about the situation at Sheffield at the moment. You're not playing rugby this year, and you're not entering the exciting Autumn Cup, which we're all looking forward to as a triangular tournament, it seems, at the moment. I guess that was a hard decision in terms of everyone wants to see teams play, but in terms of the future of the club, an easy decision.
Yeah, I mean, our first port of call was we spoke to the players and staff, and we surveyed the players, and of the 22 players who still got with us, all of them came back and said they don't want to take part in a autumn competition. So it was an easy call for us after they said that to us. There's the prohibited cost of testing, taking the players and myself and Mark off furlough and things like that. So yeah, it was a no-brainer for us. It was difficult. Obviously, we want to be back. We're missing it, and we want the fans to obviously take advantage of the season tickets and the sponsors to get their money's worth and things like that. But yeah, it's a difficult one for us, and also the fact that we don't want to hamper our next season. So next season they're still looking like next season will start in February because we're bookended by the World Cup, so we can't delay next season. So playing October, November, giving the players maybe a few weeks off before we get back into pre-season over Christmas isn't something we wanted to do. So, difficult one, but it was, like I say, made easy by what the players told us. We follow their word.
You mentioned the World Cup, and obviously Sheffield, the Doncaster axis as well, is going to be a key part of it. You've got your fixtures now. Bramall Lane coming on board. Was it worth sacrificing 2020 because 2021 has the promise of almost a relaunch of Sheffield Eagles? Yeah,
it's massive for us, the World Cup. We bid in 2013 and we lost out. We wanted the England-Ireland game, which was a sellout at Huddersfield, obviously with Mark Aston then being the coach of Ireland. And we lost out on it, and it was very disappointing to lose that because we thought we could sell out Bramall Lane at 32,000. Huddersfield sold out at 25,000. So we made it up to get England. Again, BBC primetime. Yeah, it is against Greece, but again, I don't want to give any disrespect to Greece, and we're hosting them in the city, and having them out in the community for 4 to 6 weeks when they're in the tournament, when they're here, will be massive for us. And also having the 4 wheelchair sides here, part of our development plan moving forward is to have a wheelchair side, and we'll be pushing ahead with that very quickly, because having 4 wheelchair sides based here and having those sides based here playing here in the semi-finals is huge for that side of the game as well. So. No, it can't be over or underestimated how big it is for us. And early next year, we'll have fingers crossed, a development officer in place. We're working with the RFL, working with the council, and working with the City Trust to basically all 4 of us come together and fund a post for minimum of 2 years. And we've not had that for a few years now after the troubles we've had. So to get someone full-time back in post, utilising the World Cup, and then afterwards getting back into schools, it's big for us. It's not just the game at Bramall Lane and the games at EIS. It's everything that comes around it. So, yeah, we're massively looking forward to it.
We talk about London a lot being nomadic, Liam, but obviously yourselves at Sheffield, you've had a year at Doncaster, you're at Wakefield. Well, we obviously love having you at Wakefield, but not quite the same as being in your own city, in your own home, and a year at Ollerton since moving from Don Valley since they got knocked down. You must be really, really desperate to get the Olympic Legacy Park sorted and fit for Championship Rugby or Super League in the future.
Yeah, I think I came back. I got back involved in late 2015, and I've worked at I think 7 different venues for home matches in 5 years. So we've been all over, and it's tough for us, it's tough for the fans, and it's not ideal. I've got to say that people like Michael Carter at Wakefield and Carl at Doncaster have been. I don't know what we would have done without them. To be fair, we struggle. So yeah, to have the Olympic Legacy Park. Again, the word is September they'll start. Obviously, COVID's put that back. But yeah, if we can get that started in September and get a lot of the work done prior to next season and have a makeshift Olympic Legacy Park while it's constructed and finished in circa May, June next year, it'd be huge for us. Huge. We've not had a venue since Don Valley got knocked down. And again, for all Don Valley's negatives and being the running track and all the rest of it, it was a home, it was a base for us. We've not had that. We've not had a training base, an office, and a playing venue since Don Valley, which will be next year, sort of 8 years ago. So to have that again, it'd be huge for us, and to push forward again, because our crowds have continually dropped, and we need to get back up because we're not sustainable at the moment. It's been tough for us. It's been tough for the supporters. So to get that going is again huge for us. So 2021 could be a big year for Sheffield. Fingers crossed.
Sportsman City, of course, Paul. Sheffield, two football clubs, one in the Premier League now. The ice hockey team won something this year. I can't remember what it was. Oh, the Challenge Cup, that was it. Basketball team. Of course, the Eagles as well. Not too far away from our exciting home base of the M62. Somehow, we need to give them more support than perhaps we have in the past.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I love to see the game grow in Sheffield. Sheffield, for me, was home for 3 years when I went to university to get my increasingly worthless journalism degree. So I've a lot of great memories from there. I remember back then, obviously, covering the Eagles a little bit as part of my degree. And yeah, and also as a rugby league fan in the city, I was aware that the sport really didn't have much of a presence, much of a consciousness in the wider city. Obviously, you had passionate people involved in the Eagles who clearly loved the game, and I mean, Mark Aston being the number one example of that. It would be fantastic if we were able to sort of rope that area in to the M62 corridor, as you say, not too far away from us. We've not quite managed to do that, and yeah, I guess Sport Mad City, Football Mad City, you're up against two really big clubs there to establish a sort of hold in the market. But yeah, I mean, there's positives for us. There's things we can sell to Sheffield about rugby league. Obviously, the history of the club, the 1998 and all that. It's an area we should be doing more in. I would feel generally, and I think we talked extensively about the game's efforts to go in Toronto last time I was here, and about needing a collective desire to make that possible, having a strategy centrally to deliver that. We need that focus similarly in places like Sheffield, who could be a great base for the sport, but have just slightly eluded us so far, with all due respect to all the great work that Liam and Sheffield have done over the years.
I think the other thing about Sheffield is it's a potential source of players, and Liam's got a couple from the city that are playing regularly for the Eagles. There are others that have gone on to play with other clubs, and there is an untapped resource there on the doorstep. There's some really good community clubs in the South Yorkshire area. Their fortunes have fluctuated in line with the Eagles not having the prominence that they perhaps once did. But again, that's another untapped resource for the sport that we just need to bring on board. We need the Eagles with a proper academy or a centre of excellence for South Yorkshire. All of that is actually low-hanging fruit. And I think that's where the sport becomes frustrating at times, because you're absolutely right that this is relevant to the Toronto debate on the basis of the fact that if you don't have an expansion policy, you don't know where any club fits in and what more they can do. But this is one that's on our doorstep that we've never properly exploited. A club who won arguably one of, if not the most dramatic cup finals that the nation had ever seen, and within a year didn't exist. As a sport, how somebody needs to grab hold of that and be responsible for it and look to rectify it.
Yeah, on the player front, I mean, we had our performance pathway taken away from us in 2016, but it took those 16 years to build that up. And you still, if we do get a Great Britain international, then fantastic. But we weren't aiming for that. You've got Corey Aston, Eddie Batty playing out there. You've got 5 players at Sheffield who've come through the academy: Paddy Burns, Greg Burns, Blake Broadbent, Ryan Miller, and then there's players out there in League One. There's a lot of players in League One that come through the Sheffield system, like Kadeem Williams at Coventry and Connor Scott at Doncaster. They are out there. They are out there playing professional game. It's not that just because they're not at the higher echelons of Super League and internationals, but they are professional players. So that will take time to develop again, but that's a key aim for us as well moving forward.
We'll talk more about the Championship and League One shutdown, I guess, later. But just before we move on to the games, I mentioned the Steelers there a few moments ago. There's that appetite, I guess, in Sheffield as a city for family-based sport. Yes, they've got the big advantage of they're inside in an arena. You're outside and you can't predict the weather. But that's obviously, there is a market there in the city for people who want to watch some kind of physical sport. It's just a matter of getting them through the turnstiles.
Yeah, and we need to. I think we've been our own worst enemy in terms of marketing and promoting the sport. But again, it's difficult to promote to the people in Sheffield when you're playing in Wakefield or Doncaster, or you're playing at a makeshift Olympic Legacy Park with portable toilets and a temporary stand. So we're conscious of that, and when the stadium does happen, we will have some efforts, both time and money wise, on marketing, because that's our sort of one chance of it. You look at what Warrington did when they moved from Wilderspool to Halliwell Jones. You look at locally here what Rotherham United when they moved from Millmore to the New York. Now it's a big opportunity for us, so we need to grasp it with both hands, especially with the World Cup coming as well. Jump on the back of that. The
World Cup, it is just over a year away. Super League is back. Headingley Stadium yesterday, you were there, Phil. You passed the temperature test. You're all right. You're allowed to go in.
I think the first thing to say is, and genuinely mean this, absolutely hats off to everybody that got us to the point where we could have those games. Now, the work that was done behind the scenes that doesn't get seen and acknowledged, which is a combination of Super League, the RFL, and the clubs themselves, the protocols that were put in place that, we all laugh at, it's a tick box exercise. And, it was superbly organised, logistically brilliant, as good as it could possibly be in the circumstances, completely unreal. From talking to people who watch the games at home compared to the experience that the people who were in the stadium had, you actually were better at home. The incentive to not go down to the ground was greater. But the rigour with which they put in place the safety requirements was fantastic. You wouldn't have got into the ground if you hadn't completed the form on the morning saying that you weren't carrying any symptoms. You wouldn't have got past the accreditation gate if you failed the temperature test. There was only one way into the area that you were allowed into, depending on what category you were. The press and Sky were all in the south stand, but superbly allocated space away from each other. The only really odd thing was that things like there was no big screen. So again, the people at home had a better understanding of what was happening than the people in the ground. The only sound that we could hear, apart from the coaches shouting from the other side, was Terry O'Connor getting excited when he was summarising on something. And that was surreal, because you sat there in almost silence. You could hear the collisions. That was great. But then when the action slowed down after a try, Terry screaming being the only thing you could hear was just bizarre. But we'll talk about the games themselves and what they actually mean and what the season is going to pan out to be. But as an exercise in getting the sport back on its feet, just think, need to pay tribute to all those agencies that got us to the point where it actually happened. It was superb.
We're going to try and leave it as long as possible to talk about that second game, because we don't want to get Phil too excited early on in the programme.
Don't want to peak too early.
No, well, no. But there was a theory on the programme last week when we were doing the predictions that Caplan's having gone back training early, Paul, might have a bit of an advantage over St Helens. But that was certainly not the case. And Saints looking every bit the champions. Perhaps they didn't show at the start of the season, but certainly did last year.
Yeah, I mean, if you're looking for teams to come out of lockdown looking primed, I mean, St Helens certainly did. Catalan's not so much. I think that was the problem with you not having me on last week. Clearly, your predictions were all way off. Yeah, Saints looked great, I thought. And yeah, Catalan's not quite at the races, and I think they missed Sam Tompkins despite Arthur Morg playing really well. I was impressed by Saints, yeah. And then obviously to lose Luke Thompson from your lineup, to then not have Matty Lees, and to have James Graham come in and start his first game in, 9 years for St Helens, and slot back in pretty seamlessly, I thought. I was impressed by them. They looked like a team that had put in the hard work as much as they could since the return. And, I mean, they're just a well-oiled machine, aren't they, St Helens? Perhaps this reset of the season will work in their favour. Perhaps it's just what they needed, because their record pre-lockdown was 2 wins, 3 wins if you include the Toronto one, which is now null and void. So they've come back looking every inch the champions.
I made up a word last week which was like expunged, but I can't remember what it was now. Very impressive from Saints, Liam. Catalans are always a team who we find it difficult to work out, especially away from home. It's almost a cliche that they just don't travel, but they certainly didn't travel yesterday.
No, and again, we found that with Toulouse before. We played Toulouse this year, and we ran them pretty close until the last sort of 5-10 minutes. And we beat them comfortably last year, and obviously then they're quite further up in the league table than us. And yeah, they didn't look at the race at all yesterday, Catalans. I thought Saints just came out on fire. I think Zeb Taylor, who goes under the radar quite a little bit, he's a workhorse, and yesterday he was he was excellent for them, and I think he'll be missed a lot more than people expect sort of next year when he retires or goes back to Australia. Yeah, good performance from Saints yesterday.
I think the one thing we did talk about last week was that there was no form line because of the change in the rules. And that was a classic example of a team that recruited to play a certain way. You know, when the team sheet came through, you looked at the bench of the Dragons and you just thought they're too big for these new rules. But you looked at Saints, who traditionally under Justin Holbrook, and perhaps hadn't yet started to do it under Christian Wolf, they've always been a team that wanted to play fast and wanted to use their handling skill to break the opposition down, whether that's a forward or a back. So the new rules really suit St Helens. They looked not so much fit, but they just looked aware from the first minute. Whereas the Dragons, I think, found it very difficult to change the way they were playing. And you'd take somebody like a Sam Cassiano, who has got a brilliant offload in him, but not a great engine. And these new rules will expose that. So, yeah, Saints were a joy to watch because of the way their philosophy and the way they play the game, and it really suits them. What was interesting was that, again, being at the ground, which I'm told is not a perception that you get on the television, because clearly the crowd noise does give you a different view on it, is that the first game, because it was relatively one-sided from the beginning, felt like an opposed training session. And you almost felt like you wanted scrums just to break it up a little bit. The second game, because it was a really engaging contest and ended in the way that it did, you didn't even miss the fact that there wasn't a scrum. But, all of these things are going to play out, and teams will adapt at a different rate. And I think the problem the Dragons have got is their recruitment, that they have recruited to play a certain way, and that way has changed virtually overnight for them.
As we know, Phil, you were a scrum half. You had that exciting bandage on your knee. I was a prop.
The way I played, to be honest.
I was a prop when defending, a winger when going forward, so I was nowhere near the ball. I don't know where Paul, did you ever play? What position were you?
Substitutes bench mostly. Hooker, interchange hooker. Utility man.
You'd be so valuable in this current day and age.
Yeah. I was once in St Williams, who are now defunct, sadly, in St Williams under Tens, I think, Club Man of the Year, which is basically the
person who tries the hardest
award. So yeah, not very talented. So I mean,
for training more than anybody else.
Yeah, wherever they could get away with fielding me, really. That's my position.
Kindred spirit, Paul. That's good. Liam, did you ever play?
I was actually a referee in a former life. So, yeah, up until about 18 when I came to Sheffield for university, I was a referee. So when I'm sat next to Mr. Aston at games when he's screaming at some decisions, I have a bit of a sympathy with the man in the middle. So, but I thought they did pretty well yesterday, to be fair. Failer and I thought they did pretty well.
I was really pleased actually to see them back their own decisions and what they'd seen rather than go to the video ref. And I know that caused some controversy in the second game, but I thought it was really refreshing, especially having watched the NRL quite closely these past few weeks, where there's been a lot more hesitancy to back your own view on a decision and go to the bunker just in case. They clearly didn't do that. The first game, Ben Thaler had that call, didn't he, with Bentley, where I thought, I'm not sure. Has he got that down here? Is he going to go to the video ref or not? I would have thought he would do. He didn't. He backed his own decision, and it was right. The video replays show that he was right. And had he gone to the video ref, we'd have lost another 2 or 3 minutes looking at that replay of whether it was a try or not. I'm sure Catalans probably would have wanted that actually at that stage. They probably could have done with a breather. But I enjoyed it. I think it made a better spectacle at home. So it's they get enough stick off us at times. So I think it's only fair that we congratulate them when they play a part in increasing the spectacle.
And the thing to add to that is that they've had to learn a complete new way of interpreting the game at speed, with no chance to even practice it or even assess their own fitness levels other than the individual work that they've done. You never know until you get out there exactly how much it's going to take out. They didn't miss a thing. We'll always argue till the cows come home that they may have got a decision right or wrong, but the keeping up with play, as you say, I guess the confidence to go with what they were seeing. I think we could probably do better as a sport with signalling the 6 to go. We don't need a horse coughing in the background 3 seconds after it's happened to try and work out whether it's a 6 to go again. Technology has moved on a little bit. But they were brilliant, and they're not given enough credit for what they've done in such a short space of time, coming back, working in a completely new environment. The only thing I'm really not sure about is Robert Hicks's beard. I don't know if he's auditioning for Long John Silver in the pantomime season, but I know nothing about sartorial elegance, but that was a brave look for me.
Did we miss scrums? Because they're just a way of getting the big blokes out of the way, aren't they? Generally, I know they do what like us saying that any prop forwards listening, but that's all they're there for these days.
I didn't miss them one bit. I kind of forgot. I think, like Phil said, in the Huddersfield Leeds game, that scrums weren't a thing anymore, and I didn't miss them at all. I know there's an argument for the potential for them to teams to put on attacking plays, that set plays that you can't do otherwise. I'm happy to lose those. I thought it was perfectly fine. I think their spectacle was, if anything, improved.
Yeah, and I think when they are packing down scrums and there's a knock on or a forward pass and it results in a scrum, then you're usually getting a replay from that error, or you're getting a replay from something else that's caused a scrum, so you don't see them. You don't see all that anyway. So it speeds the game up. And like I say, I didn't notice it, to be fair, yesterday. I thought it's gone. So I think it might be something not just for this season. It could roll into future seasons.
I think by having uncontested scrums, we also invite unfavourable comparisons to Rugby Union. Rugby Union can legitimately say, oh, we have proper scrums in our game, and that can be a stick that you beat us with. So our scrum does tend to be a bit of an embarrassment at times. So I'm all for getting rid of it.
I think they will be back next year. Again, looking at the rules that the World Cup is going to be played under, one of the things we will have, I think, are scrums. So we'll get back to them in 2021 if conditions of whatever the virus is doing in those days allow us to. Because I believe scrums are deemed to be a microclimate. And that's why we don't have them.
Steam coming off them.
Of course, the Australians they still have them, so I think that'll be key for next year, won't it? We'll just do what.
Yeah, I mean, Australia have them because they don't have the same need microclimate-wise because of the amount of cases that they've had, although clearly what's happening in Victoria at the moment is a concern. But if they are going to be in one of the arms of the professional game, they're going to have to be in the other one. What was interesting, I think, is that when you look at the way the Huddersfield Leeds game ended, which we'll come on to, I think Huddersfield would have given anything to slow the game down in that last 5 minutes, and that might have involved kicking to touch to have a scrum that they know they wouldn't have won the head and feed from, but it would have allowed them to break up that momentum, the word that we're not allowed to use in deference to the great Mr. Studd, who thankfully is on the improve. But I think, it's such an integral part of the game that during the Saints Catalan match, I almost wanted a scrum just because it was becoming a little bit one-dimensional because of how good Saints were. But actually, whether we need them or not is a debate worth having now. And then you talk about, well, do we need 13 players? Because that was brought up with a certain number of forwards who went into the scrum. I don't know. It's interesting. Is speed more important than the nuance of the game?
Well, that'll save a few quid if we get rid of a couple of squad players. I don't know if the players' union will necessarily be happy about that. That means, of course, if we didn't have the kicking to touch, that 2014 Challenge Cup final just comes to mind because Kevin Sinfield kicked Castleford to death in that one. That might have been a different result, but it wasn't, so it doesn't matter. We'll talk more about things going on around Saints and Catalans in a moment, because we have to do, unfortunately. But Leeds and Huddersfield and Leeds was next up. Simon Wolford, if you're watching, turn off now. Apologies. I saw your tweets last night, Paul. Of course, you want to be editing a newspaper at the moment, but you'd be fairly glad you weren't at 8 o'clock when the game's coming to its conclusion. Everyone thinks it's finished, and it hasn't. That's all.
Oh, I was delighted at that point not to be working because I can't stress enough to you how difficult it is when you're up against the deadline for a start. The game's kicking off at 6:30, which means that if things go well and if there's not too many, stoppages, you could be done by 20 past 8, maybe 8:30 more realistically. Your print deadline is 8:30 at the very latest. So you're basically relying on everything going smoothly. What you don't need is players going down injured for any length of time, as happened with James Donaldson late on in the game. What you definitely don't need is golden point. Factor in, of course, I had sympathy for the people, the journalists at the ground, because the steam must have been coming off the laptops with the furious rewriting of those intros. All their work from the previous 79 minutes just binned. But worse than that, I fear for the editorial staff at our competitors, League Express, because I know if that was me, I mean, I nearly carked it when the £1 million game with Toronto and London Broncos. This one, I don't know what I'd have done. It would not have been a fun evening. So just think when you're enjoying this spectacle at home and you think golden point's great, isn't it wonderful? Wasn't this ending wonderful? Just think of the poor journalists and editors who have gone through hell as a result. I was delighted not to be working. Absolutely made up. I had a chuckle about that.
How did we manage to kick off the first game late anyway? There's no one there. How do we manage to kick off the first game late? We can't get it done normally on a Friday night. Everything kicks off late, and now in a time when there's nothing on, we still kicked off late. I don't understand it. I never will.
I think it was to let everybody into the stadium.
Make sure everyone was there. Was there anyone there who shouldn't have been there? Without naming names, was everyone there legitimately yesterday?
I'm told the attendance was something around 230, so all was good.
Good. Liam, Huddersfield like the Bet Noir of Sheffield fans? Has it been forgive and forget now? Because it's a long time ago.
I don't. Well, in my period here, I've only been sort of involved for 7, 8 years, both as a supporter then working here, and so it's not really it pulls at my heartstrings like it does with some supporters. But yeah, some of our die in the wool supporters who were around when it happened, it's still very very sore. And yeah, I don't think we played him in the Challenge Cup or anything like that since. So that should be interesting if we ever get drawn against him.
Like MK Dons and Wimbledon. So those die-hard fans will be very happy with the Leeds comeback. But it was a superb finish to a cracking game.
Oh yeah, great game. I nearly missed it because I thought it's done, and I started doing a bit of cooking, and then I heard Stuart Pike getting a bit excited, so I thought I'd best go back in the living room and see what's going on. It was interesting, wasn't it? It was an implode, but. Yeah, I'm a fan of Golden Point, albeit we've experienced Golden Point, and I didn't realise it was happening. I got up at the end of our game versus Batley earlier this year, and our statsman Richard said, "Where are you going?" I thought the game were done. So I'm glad Sky kept reminding us about it yesterday.
Stuart Pike, I thought, by the way. I mean, when Leeds scored that first try, he was like, "Oh, potentially game on here," and I'm at home thinking, "All right, come on, Stuart," giving it the hard sell for maybe he saw it coming. Maybe he saw something that we didn't.
Yeah.
You thought we were all going to turn over and watch the snooker or something? Get bored of this. Leeds were in crisis for 60 odd minutes, Phil, and now they're back again.
Yeah, the T-shirts were out. They're on sale at a trestle table outside the ground for nobody walking past. And now they're top of the league, having a laugh. It was a bizarre game. I can't stress how good Huddersfield were for the first 60 minutes. They were aggressive. They had this element of youthful vibrancy about them. That their team selection looked fantastic. The young kids they were bringing off the bench were adding to them. And at 26-6, they were in absolute total command. What happened after that? There's possibly one element they're missing in their makeup, because they are a much, much better team than anything they've shown over the last couple of years. Was they just needed a leader in that 20 minutes when you could see things were just starting to slip away. The body language, it just needed somebody. And Ashton Golden was trying at the back. He is a vociferous player, but he's new to all of his teammates, and this was his first game, and it just needed probably an Aidan Caesar type character to stand up and say, just give me the ball on a regular basis. Even if I have to kick downfield, just chase it, keep them on their own line or as near to as best you can. And you could almost see that when the one thing Leeds have got is the ability to move the ball. They hadn't done it particularly well for 60 minutes, but once they started to do it, there is something a little bit irresistible sometimes about the way that they do it, in the same way that St Helens do. And if you make a mistake, it's going to cost you. But if under these new rules you don't make a mistake, it's almost possession for as long as you want it. I think Huddersfield gave away 5 penalties in that period, which, when you add that to the fact that Leeds were scoring on a back-to-back basis, it just made it impossible for the Giants to stop the flow. But if Sky could have picked an ending to a game with drama, no matter who was playing and who came out on top, for that comeback, 15 minutes of absolute mayhem and the drop goal at the end of it, they would have scripted a finish like that for any neutral watching to tune in again next week. And I think that was the exciting thing. The tries that were scored were superbly crafted on both sides. It was a great advert for the sport, and at some point we will have to talk about it, but it very nearly wrenched the headlines away from what everybody was sending in copy about, which was not even a rugby related issue, sadly.
And something else which happened yesterday, which seems to have gone, journalists don't seem to be talking about, which we'll come to as well later, which involves Lee Gaskell, but not of his making. It was interesting how towards the end of the game, when the penalty count was heavily in favour of Huddersfield, Phil Clark on the telly pretty much insinuated that somehow towards the end of games they always even themselves out, which was interesting.
I think, again, with the new rules, it is very, very easy once you get on a roll to stay on it, because the defending teams know that they cannot take any liberties in the tackle. They can't use as a tactic slowing the game down, because the one thing that they don't need is to be defending 18 tackles on the bounce. So it does change the dynamic. But whereas Leeds had a leader in Luke Gale, who when he got a scent of something happening just went, right, I'll be the pivot, I'll make sure that things can happen. Huddersfield didn't have that. That'll change. But players will realise that they need to step up when circumstances change. My concern, I think, for all of the teams is that there's going to be a really heavy injury toll. I don't think that we're going to see the same 17 on the park for any team on consecutive weeks. It is brutal out there in terms of the speed and the readjustment and the collisions and the fact that you don't get a break. You don't stop to have a breath. You can't sort of say, well, there's going to be a scrum. That's 30 seconds. We'll all walk to it as slowly as we can. We'll get a bit of a second wind. We'll have a little chat while we're on the way up there about what we're going to do from the next play. And I'll just have a quick word with the winger and ask him to come in a bit or stay out a bit. All of that tends to go out the window because it's relentless. And I think that will have a real toll on the personnel that are playing this season.
Yeah, I think you look at the rotation. Like obviously, I don't know if it was his debut yesterday, but Joe Batchelor, obviously playing for Saints, and I thought he did fairly well. It will take its toll. So having that rotation, and I think Saints started that early yesterday by having some of the younger players like Batchelor, and I think Bentley's coming on it excellently now, starting that early on, because it will mount particularly towards the business end when there's midweek games and things like that. It's going to take its toll, definitely.
Didn't even mention that run from Morgan Knowles, did we? Which was an absolute highlight of that game as well for Saints. But Paul, the one thing Leeds had at the end, which you can't put a price on, is fights. And in the last few years, perhaps they've been missing something, but they certainly had fight yesterday. And never give up. Never give up. Yeah,
absolutely right. And like you say, perhaps they've missed that the last couple of years, but it was always a defining characteristic, wasn't it, of the great Leeds teams before that. And that's incredibly encouraging for Richard Agar to see that team, I mean, play so poorly, really, with all due respect to Huddersfield, because Huddersfield were excellent. Leeds were not good for 65 minutes, but still, and despite going down to 12 men, which you shouldn't overlook when they start the comeback, to then be able to come back from that and not give it up, I think that's incredibly encouraging for Richard Agar. I do wonder whether being backed into a corner, Leeds obviously had to play expansively. I just wonder if that worked in their favour, because they are strong at that, and maybe that's a lesson going forward, especially in these games as we've mentioned, where there's not as many stoppages. Maybe they need to involve their backs a little more and make use of that back line, because it is one of the best in the league for me.
I think the other thing you're going to need is variety on the bench, because, again, one of the things that turned it around for Leeds, I think, was having Adam Cuthbertson come on, who is an offloader in the middle of the field. Cruz Leeming came on, who was a real steadying influence and just the right option taker. So I think your bench and what your bench can offer by way of difference is going to be massive for every team going forward, and that is going to be a real tough job for the coaches to be able to bring people on who can make a difference.
Now, I have an email has just come through, and it's embargoed until 7:15, but because we're not live, I can read it now and no one will know, apart from I just told you. This is coming from Super League now, so we'll discuss this now. We'll talk about this. Betfred Super League update, Toronto Wolfpack, it's entitled. Betfred Super League has terminated Toronto Wolfpack's Super League participation agreement for the 2020 season, following its withdrawal from the competition last month. Super League's action reflects the seriousness of the breach of contract by Toronto Wolfpack, which has impacted Super League and its member clubs. The Wolfpack would now have to enter into a new participation agreement before being able to play in the competition in 2021. As previously stated by Super League and the RFL, any application received from the club will be given full and timely consideration. I don't know if that changes absolutely anything at all, to be honest, because we knew they weren't going to play again this year, but they have to apply to be back in next year, almost like a franchise, if you will.
Yeah, I don't think it changes anything, does it? They were always going to have to convince Super League that this sort of thing wasn't going to happen again, that they changed to be able to continue. So yeah, this has no real bearing. It sounded exciting though when you said I've got an embargo press release. I was thought, oh, this is going to be good on the hoof. Yeah, bit of a non-event really, Richard. You've let me down.
I think that just means that Sonny Bill can't come back now for 2020.
His contract's not worth the paper it's written on, I read in Australia today, but there you go. Well, there you go, Liam. You get a bid together in Sheffield, you might get this participation agreement, you never know.
It's a shame, isn't it? I mean, I don't know, I'm only guessing, but I imagine Super League will look to run with 11 next year. I'm guessing, well, for players, it won't be the worst thing in the world because they're going to be finishing late this year, starting probably the same time next year. It'll give some teams some weeks off and, like say, having bye weeks and things like that, particularly with a World Cup at the end of it, it'll give teams a much needed rest next year. So, and hopefully then in turn they'll have a 1 down 2 coming up for the Championship, which hopefully will keep those that want to come back and wanted promotion to return happy as well come 2022. But yeah, a bit of a non-event really, Richard, that one, because it's what we already knew. But hey,
well, I apologise on behalf. I don't even know how I've got into this mailing list on Super League, to be honest. I think they think I'm important somewhere, but they don't realise I'm not working at the minute. But don't tell them.
So I think that opens up the way for two things. One is a different Toronto Wolfpack to apply in terms of ownership. I think what it's basically saying is the agreement that is with the current owner is now null and void, but that doesn't mean to say we won't have an agreement with a different owner. And I think we all know there are talks going on behind the scenes with potential different owners. And it would make sense economically if somebody could come in and clear their current debt, not necessarily pay back David Argyle. I think even he will realise that his investment is now written off. But if they could clearly pay the players and the creditors, there's an ability to start again in 2021. The other thing that's interesting is the words participation agreement, because clearly Toronto weren't happy with the current participation agreement because it meant they didn't have any access to central funding and were liable for everybody coming out and seeing them. If they can be in a position, they being potential new owners, to renegotiate a slightly different participation agreement whereby they get some of their costs covered or a bit of central funding, or an agreement that if they come up with a television deal, should they be able to do so, some of that goes to the other clubs, which would change the current terms of the existing participation agreement. That might work in Toronto's favour as well as Super League.
Well, do you think, Phil, then, if a bid was to come in from existing owners of a club or clubs or sporting organisation, put it that way, that Super League would be more likely to agree to that kind of give up if they're assured that the person running the club or persons are legitimate and have a track record of running professional sporting clubs?
I think 12 teams works for everybody next year, not least because they've already announced the dates of Magic Weekend, and I think it's almost impossible to have 11 teams because who would miss out on something like that? I also think that it is virtually impossible to run with a bye week in our competitions. Again, when you have it, how you turn around, go from 5 days to a week off. I'm really not sure. We don't have state of origin where a lot of the key players are going to be missing. So bye weeks, I'm not sure work. I'd rather that we shortened the season by having no loop games than extended the season by having bye weeks in there. So I think they want 12 teams. I think because of the current economic implications of COVID, I think they'd want that 12th team not to take a 12th of the money. Whereas if a League came up or a Bradford came up or a Featherstone or a Toulouse, their participation agreement is that actually the current Super League clubs would have to tip something in rather than take something out. So I think if they could renegotiate with Toronto in whatever guise they are for 2021 to say, we will give you a little bit, but clearly it's not the full amount you'd get as a 12th of the competition. You will get a membership status, which they don't have at the moment. But your punishment, if you like, for the old club not fulfilling its obligations in 2020 is you only get part payment, which is what they did to Bradford, when they were allowed to stay in the competition having gone into liquidation. There's a compromise there for everybody. And then I think you would say that participation agreement and the amounts that people get from it is subject to whatever the negotiation is for the 2021 onwards television contract. So Toronto may then be able to say, right, well, we'll only take 20% in 2020, and we acknowledge that that's because we need to reprove ourselves, whoever we are. But, depending on the television deal, if it's of a similar amount that you're getting now, we would maybe go up to 50% and over 3 years, 100%. But there's loads of issues about promotion, relegation, franchising. All of that needs to come into it. I just think the door's been left open for both parties for 2020. And I think there are people out there who currently are involved in rugby league who are looking at it as a potentially good investment. The interesting thing will be is how they see exploiting that market. And it's encouraging, I think, that one of the people who are interested may currently be involved in a club that's in a lower league, but has access to proven funds, and the marriage of the two could be the perfect solution for 2020.
And I guess, Paul, if a new Toronto were actually based here rather than based in Canada for visa reasons and whatever, as it seems that Ottawa are from what John said the other week, that would make a lot more sense as well. So we don't have this mess, not that it wouldn't have happened anyway in terms of the club imploding, but with the visas and such this year.
Yeah, absolutely. That would be, I guess, a trade-off of legitimacy, calling yourself a Toronto team that's actually officially based in the UK rather than Toronto. But from a practical point of view, that would work in terms of visas. And would it have much, would the fact that it's technically based in the UK have much of an impact in Toronto? Probably not. So, that might be a sensible way forward for him.
But we'll ask all their fans on Twitter, because they're very vociferous. You can tell they're proper rugby league people, the Toronto fans. So how have you found dealing with them, Liam? Because obviously I've not been to Toronto. I don't think, Phil, you've not been, have you?
Should have been this weekend.
There you go. Should have been there. Paul, did you ever go?
No, they're still waiting for that one.
How have you found dealings with our Canadian brethren?
From an experience point of view, for the players and staff, it was great to go to Toronto and go to Niagara Falls and things like that. We was pretty woeful on the pitch that weekend. I think it was 68-4. We got beat, something like that. But it was a tough one. But some of the circumstances were difficult. We got put in a student accommodation, sort of an hour away from the ground. It was still in Toronto because Toronto is that big, and things like that. So that was a bit difficult. There wasn't much around there. I think Keith Senior had to walk a couple of miles to get a coffee from a petrol station in the middle of nowhere on a Saturday morning. So it was a bit difficult on that front. But how we dealt with him, he was okay. I'm sad to see him go because, like I talked about before, in terms of player development and things like that, it's a long-term project. Nothing's gonna happen overnight. It would have been a 20 to 30 year project. And I hope if someone like New York or Ottawa come in, that work is they should be starting already. There should be people, and I appreciate that we struggle at the moment, but if they've got the funds to do so, they should be out in the schools, they should be out in the community, getting people playing the game before they actually kick a ball. There needs to be that base of the pyramid before you have the top.
If we're looking at the positives, we just got to hope that this situation could actually make Toronto stronger longer term, because we all hope that the business is potentially sustainable and I think we all recognise that it has a lot of potential. They've certainly got a fan base there to develop and exploit financially, if that's the right word. But what we haven't been impressed with is the management of the club in terms of paying people late. And I think I made the point previously last time I was on that just because the business has been managed poorly doesn't mean that it's a bad business. Hopefully a new regime, a new ownership would manage Toronto in a way that might endear it more to the rest of the game and give it a better image in the wider game, whilst still having the potential that we all see there in Toronto. Hopefully it can be a good thing.
there's virtually isn't a club within rugby league that throughout its history, however big it's been, hasn't gone through a period of mismanagement off the field. And you can include the biggest names in that. And the issue, I guess, is what do we want from a new market? Are we clever and aware enough to exploit it? And, you were asking Liam about the logistical issues facing a club like Sheffield, which literally is part of, the geographical area where the sport has always been strongest. We have no conception or make no dispensation for clubs that don't even have that. Their first foray into our sport is actually seeing the sport. And I would say that the Melbourne model is the one that would work in a place like Toronto, where they're used to seeing sport at the highest level. And that is, it doesn't matter if any of the players initially come from Canada. You need a team that is relatively successful and sustainable to get your fans and your corporate sponsors over there involved. And on the back of that, you start the program of development, because if people don't know what a rugby ball looks like or what you do with it, there's not a lot of point putting it in their hands first off. I think you get them to fall in love with the sport because the team that wears the colours that they support are a winning team or a team worth supporting. And they were sort of getting to that. And that's where I think we've got to be braver and say there's no team in Super League at the moment that you could say, can you get 10,000 new fans? Warrington do a fantastic job in the town of Warrington, but there's nobody in Warrington that doesn't know rugby league is played in the town. There's nobody that doesn't know the Wolves is a very powerful brand in their part of the world. They get, now 10, 11,000 people. As of right, they would get 14,000 if they were consistently successful. They're moving in that direction, but they're never going to get 24,000. That's why they only built a stadium that held 15,000. But Toronto have got to that 10,000 threshold, however they've got there, whether they've given tickets away or not, and made it sustainable. So, as a sport, should we not put some value on that, even allowing for the fact that, David Argyle has put his money where his mouth is, but has in some respects either taken his eye off the ball or been badly advised and not invested it in a manner in which he's going to see a return on it.
I know social media is a complete disgrace, and we'll talk more about that as well, but why are people abusing Toronto's fans? It's not their fault that their millionaire owner decides not to pay wages, production companies, etc. What's wrong with people?
I've got to say, on our weekend over there, they was all pretty friendly afterwards in the beer garden where they have the DJs thing. There was a good bunch, and like Paul said, just because he's been mismanaged doesn't mean it's a bad business. And I think they showed rugby league up a little bit when they first came in with the marketing and the promotion of the game, and especially when you're over there for the games, how to run a match day experience. And I don't think Warrington's getting close now, I'd say, but I don't think any other side come close to what they did, and I think we should be emulating some of that definitely over here.
I was going to talk about the championship, but I'm going to get the nasty stuff out of the way first. 3 days ago, it seemed every club in rugby league sent out the same tweet, which is always good when this happens. For some reason, on my phone to read it, I've picked out Halifax's tweet. That's just completely accidental. But it says, the RFL today shares a refreshed vision together with 4 strategic goals as part of a firm and tangible commitment by the sport to inclusion, diversity and anti-discrimination. Ralph Rimmer, CEO of the RFL, says, in recent weeks, the RFL and partner organisations have stood together to demonstrate how rugby league is a powerful force for good and can become an anti-racism campaigning sport. This is a clear focus and sits alongside our continued work on the gender balance in our sport and LGBT and disability inclusion. This is about taking action and developing and owning the actions together. Do we do that, Phil?
Some do. 67 out of 68 players did yesterday. It's fine words that we need to adhere to, but it's also got to be backed up by action. And what's been the more disappointing than the man who we don't need to give a name to because he's the best self-publicist around at the moment.
Just on that, why didn't... Because they knew he wasn't going to do it, right?
Well, did they know?
Well, judging by what Steve McNamara said afterwards, they knew. So why didn't they make a statement before the game saying he's not going to do it for this reason? And then there's no hassle there. We all know why, and that's done. It's the ambiguity of everything. The same with certain tweets last week. It's ambiguity that makes a mess of everything.
Yeah, I felt really sorry for Steve McNamara, because reading between the lines of what he was actually saying, I think he was trying to justify something that he found unjustifiable. And I'm not sure that, as a sport, we have a set of principles. And if we are going to show the rest of the world that we stand by those principles, and the majority of the people, well, not even the majority, all bar one of the people are prepared to show a degree of solidarity to those principles in a public arena, then the person that doesn't is making their own statement and putting pressure on their own teammates in a team sport and the management of that club to try and justify their actions. So I'm not sure that they did know. If they did, then, as you say, more perhaps should have been done to highlight that was going to happen in advance. And that may just have been the fact that they didn't think about what the news consequences of that would be, which would be a shame. But I think, going back to your point, and I don't particularly want to dwell on the individual concerned, because I think all that's doing is highlighting them. What are we going to do about the slew of people coming out who clearly don't see the message, don't understand the message, and don't follow a message that is absolutely unambiguous? For me, this isn't about there's two sides to a story. There is only one side. Injustice only has one side. And the thing about the video that was done, which I didn't see until afterwards, by the Huddersfield players, if you don't understand the movement, and it's not a political movement, it's a gathering of different people that have a common aim. It's not a political party. It's a movement that the sport and the sports broadcaster and the players support. Then if you don't understand what the message is, listen to what the Huddersfield guys are saying, because it's quite unambiguous. Now, if somebody doesn't want to be part of that, I think that says more about them than the message. So the question then becomes, if you've got fans that overtly are racist and you are making a statement that you don't stand up to racism, do you exercise those fans at the same time as you make a statement about how inclusive you're going to be? And again, I'm picking a team completely at random. If Hull KR have identifiable people on their social messaging sites that are making overtly racist comments, do they take the financial hit of saying, I'm sorry, we don't want you to be part of our club. You are a member. We're going to revoke your membership. I think you have to. Otherwise, it is just a very nice statement that's full of some very impressive words.
Sadly, a number of former players yesterday on social media, went with the All Lives Matter thing, which anyone... I don't even want to say who isn't an idiot, because it's I should come up with better words, but you know what I'm trying to say, Paul. We all know what's going on. We all know these people are out there. I always think that if you're not smart enough to realise that you shouldn't be saying these things publicly, then there's nothing we can do for you. And we'll talk more about social media in a minute, but when people leave ambiguous statements on social media, as a player did last week, they open themselves up to the full weight of the RFL's discrimination, whatever, and social media contracts. But as you showed yesterday, Paul, and when I tweet this clip out, which I will do at some point this week, you know exactly what we'll get in the comments section, sadly, because people don't want to... This seems strange to say. They don't want to believe in equality.
Yeah, I mean, you danced around calling people stupid for not understanding what All Lives Matter means. I think actually a lot of them do understand exactly what they're saying when they say All Lives Matter, and do exactly understand the context of it, but can float their views cloaked in that and invert the message of Black Lives Matter on its head by calling it racist for saying that only Black Lives Matter, as if that's what it stands for. I think the majority of people understand that. There may be some that don't quite understand the nuances of it, but I think actually the majority probably do and are mischievous with that. For me it was sad yesterday to see. Am I allowed to say as well for Lau on this podcast? I don't know. Phil
we call him Izzy.
Izzy. It was sad to see that. A lot of people said that it was his personal choice, and that's the Catalan's line. And you know what? I agree with that. I think it is his personal choice. It's not a personal choice I agree with. I think it's a pretty sad personal choice when you watch the video that Phil mentioned of the Huddersfield players talking about their first-hand experiences with racism, why you wouldn't want to stand with those people and all those people who have experienced prejudice over the years, why you wouldn't want to make a statement with them, I don't know. But, that's his right. I think actually it's a shame that, we're asked to respect his personal beliefs. He doesn't seem to want to respect the personal beliefs of others about who they can love or whether they should believe in a God. For that, he can be judgmental about us, but we can't judge him for his own personal beliefs. But that's another subject, I guess, altogether. For me, what was more sad was the reaction from the fans that you mentioned there, Richard. That was it was embarrassing for me just to see the amount of people who either don't get it or more likely, in my opinion, do get it actually, and I just don't believe in the equality that we're all hoping for and striving for.
So while Paul's been speaking there, I've been trying to work out how to word this, Liam, because I'm a facetious person, and this is how I am. What's it feel like for someone to be involved in the sport you work in to tell you you're going to hell?
It's lovely, yeah. It's a really nice feeling. That it justifies all the hard work and graft you put in. It's a slap in the face. I think what Paul said, it's a personal choice what he's done, and I agree with that. But if his personal choice is to be homophobic and uneducated, then that's his choice. I'm not one I'm gonna be. But on that side of it, if a player then decide, if all these people saying it's his choice, it's his personal choice, absolutely it is. But would they have that same view if, let's say, a player decided not to take part in a minute's silence or not sing the national anthem, lined up with their country? Would then they say, oh well, it's his personal choice? No, they wouldn't. Let's be frank. It's disappointing. And if he wants to make that call, that's his call. It's just a sad state of, like you say, more so the comments afterwards you see on social media. But again, if people's getting educated by looking on social media, which I think sadly a lot of people gain their views from at the moment, rather than actually reading about a subject and learning about it and trying to get some understanding of it. Because I'll be honest, I didn't have a full understanding of it when it's all first happened. So did some reading up and tried to understand it better, and that's what you try to do. And yeah, it's obviously not happened with quite a few people. But it's his personal choice, and but not one I agree with. And like what Phil said is, I don't think Catalans knew about it. I think that I would hope if they did know about it, or if other clubs knew what stance he was taking, then they wouldn't have selected him. However, they decided to sign him based on what he'd said previously. So maybe their moral compass is a bit different to ours. I don't know. But yeah, it's sad that we're in the shop window at the moment. I know the World Snooker's on, and there's a few bits of sport here and there, but we're one of the main sports on, particularly over August on Sky Sports, and we are in the shop window. And what happens is we're talking about off-field stuff again, albeit there was some entertaining stuff on the field. We're talking about off-field stuff, and we should be focusing on that quality product with no scrums and the speed of the game and golden point. But yeah, we're talking about this again.
As I said on
Twitter, is it personal choice though? Because there are rules of clubs that people join, be it the golf club or the working men's club, and one of the rules of rugby league at the moment, as evidenced by the statement that Rich read out, is that we are an all-inclusive, tolerant sport. Now, 67 of the 68 people that were on the field yesterday were prepared to adhere to the rules of that club. If you agree to join that club, which Israel Folau has done by signing up to play for one of the clubs that abide by these rules, does he have a personal choice? Is it not more important that there is a line that he has signed up to follow? And how would you feel if you were one of his teammates? This is a team sport, and there will be people within his team who are materially affected by the issues of Black Lives Matter. And they look at him and go, he's not prepared to support me in something as important as this. Is it personal choice? I'm not even sure that it is. It's either right or wrong.
I'd hope that there should have been a game-wide directive sent out that all clubs must adhere to this and do this. So he potentially has broken rules. I don't know if they have. I don't know what Super League's put out there. But yeah, it's I wouldn't want someone like that in our club, certainly. I mean, you can't police people's what they think inside the head, but obviously he's gone out publicly and done it again yesterday. So yeah, obviously players sign contracts, but again, I don't know what is in the equalities and diversity in Caplan Dragons and things like that, what they stand for and things like that. And yeah, it's interesting.
I don't think you can force somebody into making a protest. I think once you do that, it becomes meaningless, actually. So I don't know. I don't think he should have been forced to do it. I just think it's a sad reflection on him that he chose not to.
But then if we'd have all known,
in my view.
But if we'd have all known that was going to happen and that was agreed by every player, then should he have stood down from playing in this game if he didn't want to do it? That's what I'm saying, that you can't have it both ways. You know, if the rules of the golf club are that you can't wear shorts and you turn up with the most beautiful kit and equipment but you're wearing shorts, they're not going to allow you to play. So if he was so convinced that he couldn't, for whatever reason, and he's entitled to, take the knee, then should we as a sport and Catalan of a club have turned around to him and say, for all of the games that we're going to take a knee, you're going to have to sit it out?
I think it's tricky, isn't it? You don't get to the point where when we get to November the 1st, everyone on BBC One, whether you're a newsreader or the Cookie Monster, wears a poppy, and it kind of, there's no... It's just, look, everyone's wearing a poppy because it's that time of year. And if anyone doesn't wear one, they hold up before the Mail online and everyone gets to throw tomatoes at them. And we've seen James McLean, who every year makes his reasons for not wearing a poppy, and everyone still has a go at him.
Exactly. I just want consistency on that. And we'll see that because the season will go into November this time. And, I just hope all these people who defend Israel Folau's decision not to take the knee are consistent when it comes around to anybody who doesn't wear a poppy, which is fine. And that's fine by me as well. If you don't want to wear a poppy, I respect that. But be consistent with it. And it just so happens to be that people are furious about acts that go against a certain, let's say, political viewpoint or wing of politics.
Did you want to say gammon then?
I wouldn't possibly.
Karens.
I wouldn't want to say that at all.
I would say as well in it that if he made the comments that he's made previously, if he made them say about Jewish people or Christians or black people or anything else, would he have been allowed in the sport at the time? I hope not, but I hope he wouldn't be allowed in the sport in our sport in the first place. But again, it's happened. And we've just got to, try and deal with it in the best way we can, because, again, we're in that window at the moment where I think we need to promote the best of the sport while we can. We're in that shop window and not talk about this side of it. Again, if this happened in the Premier League, when it was going on in the Premier League, I think it'd be front page news, it'd be headline news. So I'm sort of blessed in a way that we're not a big sport, because if we was a big sport, this would have been sort of GMT, Good Morning Britain, BBC, first thing this morning and things like that.
How many times have I tweeted over the past few months that players involved in our sport and people attached to our sport, be they club chairmen, chief executives, coaches, agents, whatever, should wake up every day thankful that this sport is not football for the things they do and say on social media, because they would be, for the want of a better phrase, crucified about them. I don't know what more the RFL can do than keep reminding them about their responsibilities, because like it or not, they are role models. And yesterday, again, I mean, I can't get my head around the thought process of a former Man of Steel who's been in trouble for various things, has been given a million chances, and decides to go on social media, use bad language, which is bad enough, insinuate drug use of a former professional, and it's just swept under the carpet again. No one's talking about it today. You know, fans are talking about it, but it's not a... Why is that not as big a story as a man not taking a knee? Because he's acting like an idiot.
Good question. I'm on furlough, so it's not my job anymore. You can ask Phil why it's not a story.
Why?
Great get out.
Sadly,
Great
I
get
don't
out.
follow players on social media, so I haven't actually seen any of the content.
Why are agents who make a living off the back of the exploits of these players not taking control of their social media so they don't get into trouble? I just can't understand it. We come off the back of a great game, Huddersfield versus Leeds, and all people are talking about on social media is a bloke in the first game not taking a knee and an idiot arguing with another idiot on social media. And maybe I shouldn't call them idiots. Maybe I shouldn't do that. But with the way they were tweeting last night, they act like it. The players are told. I'm sure you get messages from the RFL all the time, Liam, about tell your players to behave. Just don't do it.
I mean, I might shoot myself in the foot here, but ours are well behaved. So
You're all right.
I'm sure that'll be replayed at some point to me. But ours are very well behaved.
Do you monitor their content? I mean, if you had a player who was putting something out that was antithetical to the beliefs of the club and the sport, do you have liberty within the player's contract to insist that they either take it down, or what sanctions would you have in that case?
Yeah, there are stipulations in contracts around bringing the sport and the clubs into disrepute and things like that. But luckily we don't have to sort of implement it much. Recently, when it was announced that the season wasn't coming back, it was sort of done very hastily on the Monday night, if you remember, and we was all waiting for the Thursday, an announcement on the Thursday, but it came on the Monday, and I think that was sort of exacerbated and pushed through with what happened to Toronto that day. And we found out, some players found out through social media at other clubs. We managed to get hold of it pretty quickly and tell ours, but we sort of said as part of that, please don't express any views on social media. Let's keep it in house. And some may be angry that they're finding out quickly like this. Some may be disappointed or whatever. Let's just keep it in house. And they did do that, to be fair. But ours are okay at the moment. Fingers crossed.
I just, as I always say, be thankful you're not footballers, because if anyone picks, and I go back to Tom Lynham on the Leeds Rhinos podcast, saying the Prime Minister was, he's a publicist and he had coronavirus. You can't say these things. You can't. You are high profile people. You can't come up with conspiracy theories and nonsense.
I think it can be used for good, like with obviously like Marcus Rashford. Social media, yeah. I mean, it's very rare now, but it can be used for good, and I think there's that opportunity to do so, but we don't seem to be able to grasp it as a sport.
It's bad enough when the former players are peddling conspiracy theories, isn't it? You don't need current ones to do it. Yeah, I won't go into specifics there, but I think we know who might be on about there. I think he might have taken a few too many hits to the head during his career. Let's leave it at that.
It's just so simple not to get involved that I don't know why they do. I give up.
I think your hashtag says it all.
It's all our fault, Richard, anyway. It's all our fault.
Yeah.
You should just not be on about this.
The fun thing, everything starts as a joke. Leeds in Crisis started as a joke, then it happened. Pyongyang Pylon started as a joke, now they're, we might have a kit soon. People are idiots started as a joke, and now it's real. I don't know.
That was always real, mate.
Oh, it's always real. Just back to the Championship and League One decision, Lee. We obviously talked about Sheffield and how it's was a hard decision for obviously not to play again, but easy in terms of the finances. And I guess did you find that was a decision that was pretty much the same across the board in the Championship and League One?
No, I've got to credit the RFL, and I know they get a lot of bad press and bad stick, and rightly so sometimes. But they were good from the off with everything that happened. They consulted clubs and they surveyed clubs, and they did everything right, I've got to say, which was positive and good to see. So it was, I couldn't see a way back for us, particularly like what Phil was saying, the amount of work that has to go on behind the scenes to get games on. For particularly a lot of part-time clubs, where our club, it's myself who's full-time and Mark Aston, and that's it. There's no other full-time staff. We run with part-time and very gracious for volunteers and the backroom staff. We don't have, whereas we couldn't operate, we couldn't manage it. And I'm sure a lot of other clubs are in the same boat. Some clubs could have managed it, but I think it would have been the death knell for a lot of clubs to come back, take the players off furlough, have no income from supporters, and paying for the testing and paying for extra cleaning and all the other things that come with it would have seen a death knell of a lot of clubs, I think, including ours. I've got to say, I think that would have if it was mandated that we must return, I think we may have played maybe 5 or 6 games, and then we would have hit the wall.
I think what's interesting is that clearly the Super League season has been backloaded so that when hopefully at some point crowds are allowed back in, some of this money can be recouped. What's happened this week with the putting back of trial events with fans there is a real economic worry for the Super League teams, because it would seem that they'd hoped that August would be behind closed doors, September might see the start of fans coming back by October, there'd be a percentage of stadium would be allowed to be open. If we're now not going to have the trial events until the 1st of October, which means that all of September's behind closed doors, that's going to create some real problems for some Super League teams, I think.
The bar's open at the Rocket, though, now. You can get down to the mobile Rocket on match days. Socially distanced bar available.
Turn the pitch into a beer garden, like at Barrow?
No, because the groundsman he'd have you shot for that. But you can go into the bar. That's the good news. As long as you're socially distanced. Is there anything I've missed from the week? Is that it? I've called everyone idiots. We talked about the bloke. Talked about the games. Talked about Sheffield. Nothing else has happened, has it? There's been no exciting transfer news or anything like that. No.
I'm sure something's happened on social media in the last hour that we probably won't want to see, but I'm sure we'll do that in the next hour so we come off.
I know you're looking forward to a certain wrestling debut on Wednesday.
Oh, yes. Thanks for reminding me. Well, they say it's his debut, don't they? Because they just pretend Luke Menzies never wrestled before in NXT, but he did. But Ridge Holland, the former Luke Menzies, making his debut this week on NXT. He could be in that big match for the North American title, Paul. You must be really excited.
Yeah, I really enjoyed his promo video.
I'm from North, me.
Was it basically you're from Yorkshire? You have 2 options, and basically one of them was you go to jail, and the other one was fighting? Was it?
Nice stereotype there in America.
Great promotion for Yorkshire Day.
I quite enjoyed that one.
Oh, that's how you watch as well, Liam.
No, I think I did as a kid, and then I went to watch it the Manchester Evening News Arena, and I realised then live it was fake, and my dad said to me it's the best 20 quid he's ever spent, because then so yeah.
It's not real.
Yeah. Oh, sorry. Oh, also I don't want to mention. I shouldn't mention Santa and the Easter Bunny, then should I? I'll keep that quiet.
Next you'll be telling me that Super Leagues are not all on the level, and the Challenge Cup draw last week, that was those hot and cold balls. Knew we'd, as soon as I did that fake draw, I knew we'd come out. Never mind. The amount of production I was put into that, by the way. And for people who are wondering, and I've not written about this in the column this month because I forgot, but Daniel Vido, he's still on the wrestling. He's just in the crowd now. He just hangs around and dances behind a woman with green hair. So if you're wondering where Daniel Vido is, that's where he is. It's nearly time to go, so it's prediction time. We'll rattle through these because there are 5 games. I forgot there were 6, but no, we don't have a Toronto at the minute. And it starts on Saturday with the Caplan Dragons back in action away at the Castleford Tigers. Phil, the Castle love playing at the Emerald Headingley Stadium, whatever it's called these days.
Yeah, I'd be very interested to see how Cass come back, because I think they're a team that could benefit from these rules. I think they've got a young, athletic side that loves to promote the ball. I think this will play into the hands of the way Darryl Powell likes to coach his teams. And I'm not sure that Catalan have got enough time to change what they served up this week. Sam's not back. I think he had a 2-match ban, so I don't think their point of attack is necessarily going to change. So I can see Cass coming back with a convincing victory.
What do you make of it, Liam?
Yeah, I think I agree with that. I think it's obviously, I imagine Catalans have stayed in the country, so it's got to be tough on them to stay over here and be away from the families and things like that. And I think that'll play a toll on that. Yeah, they're the fast following side, Castleford. I think a bit in the the Saints mould, and I think they'll be red hot for Catalans on their Saturday.
I'm really not sure what to make of this, or what to make of what advantage Catalans get from having played a game, and Cass obviously going in cold. Obviously, it wasn't a great performance for Catalans, but hopefully that will have helped their fitness, their match fitness. I think it could be a lot closer than you're saying. In normal circumstances, I'd definitely be saying Castleford, but I don't know. I think maybe Catalans might be able to turn it around. Just for variety, I'll go for Catalans.
I'll stick with my WF postcode brethren, obviously, because we upset the Fev fans last week. We didn't mean to. Some of them are not going to listen again now, so that's bad. At least 2 people complained. So, like we did the show about Black Lives Matter with Sophie Robinson, people complained about that, so they'll hate this show, but never mind. Castleford. People don't want to listen. They don't listen. It's all right.
It's their personal choice, isn't it?
Personal choice.
I still spend hours watching my computer make the programme. Don't make any difference to me. Second up on Saturday, Warrington Wolves take on Hull Kingston Rovers. A repeat, of course, of that famous Challenge Cup semi-final seemingly years and years ago at Headingley as well.
I suspect that there's a huge pressure off Hull KR with something that Tony Smith said at the weekend, which I thought was, anything that Tony Smith said is worth listening to be honest. Probably learnt more from his press conferences than anybody else in the time that I've been watching the sport. But the lack of relegation doesn't just mean that the pressure is off and you can play some youngsters and they can go out and make mistakes. But actually, he thinks it'll bring a better breed of rugby league, greater spectacle. And again, if you're looking at coaches that like to promote the ball and have a philosophy of attack and are prepared to give their teams license to go out and do things, then I reckon, Hull KR will be a different team to the one that might have been inhibited if it was just them or Toronto and maybe a couple of others who might have been in the mix for going down. So I'm intrigued as to how Hull KR will play. I think there are individuals within their team, as they showed in the Derby game against Hull, one of the tries of the season that we've conveniently forgotten because it happened in another era, that they can play. They can promote the ball and they can move the ball. Warrington were the enigma before shut down. They were the team that could win or lose by 30 points. I'm not sure. I think this will be a good game. I don't think there's any form line on this at all. But just to shake it up a bit, I'm going to go Hull KR because I know you're all going to go Warrington.
Are you going to go Warrington, Liam?
I will go Warrington, but I'll sort of caveat with what Phil said that I think you will see a different Hull KR because they've got that pressure taken off and they can probably throw the ball about a bit. And again, when Tony Smith's been at Leeds and they've been sort of fighting at the top of the table, you can see what sort of side they've got. They've not got that pressure on them. So and they've got good players in there. And I think it'd be a lot closer than sort of people expect.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. I don't know. I'm gonna go an entertaining game, won by Warrington in the end.
Because our friend Sid's been getting some stick on Twitter, I'm going to go Hull Kingston Rovers to win that one. Stay safe, Sid. Sunday, 3 matches kicking off with Phil Clark's Salford Red Devils versus Andy Last's first game in charge of Hull FC. Is that to wait a while?
Again, I don't know what Hull FC we're going to get, because I think they have recruited to play a certain way, which was physically intimidating up the middle, big players with relatively short minutes that could be interchanged. Scott Taylor's already missing. He's, I think, injured his back in training. Very interesting as well to see the hooking role. And I mean, I know we talked about this a little bit last week, that hookers suddenly become a prime commodity, and the ability to interchange your hooker. And Danny Houghton is a fantastic servant and has played magnificently for Hull. But I don't know what the call is now for, you know, a hooker that makes 800 tackles and stays on for most of the 80 minutes, and what alternatives Hull have got. Because clearly the guy who would have revelled under these circumstances might have been Jez Litton, who's going to be playing for Hull KR. So I think Hull are going to have to do some adjustments, maybe a bit like Caplan are going to have to do. Salford, again, under Ian Watson, can play an exciting brand of rugby. He's somebody who likes the ball to be moved around. I'm going to go Salford narrowly.
I'll go Hull FC, but again, you do get a bounce usually. You usually get a change in form when you change coach, and it being his first game in charge, but that was echelons ago. It's months and months ago now, so I think that's sort of out the window. You're having that, but yeah, they are physical side, Hull FC, particularly with the Islanders and things like that. So it will it'd be a physical one, but I don't think Salford are done yet. I think they did have big changes after getting to the grand final last year, but I think they still can be there or thereabouts. But I'll go Hull FC.
Yeah, I have absolutely no confidence in any of my predictions.
Join the club.
Yeah.
I have no idea. I'm kind of torn on this one. Are Hull fully fit apart from Scott Taylor? Do we know that? Does anyone know anything?
I barely know who's playing, let alone if anyone's fit.
I think we're just sort of sticking pins here and coming up for the best, really, because it's just you've got nothing to judge.
Content, Paul.
So I'll go for Hull. New coach bounce. Some 5 months on.
Jake Connor finds his best form under the new rules.
I think he could be a player who enjoys them. Yeah.
I said we had two Fev fans saying they're not going to listen anymore, but Armo did slide into our DMs last week. They are open. Shouldn't publicise that. Keep up the good work. Great show as always. Gemma Carter's laugh is infectious, says Armo.
Have you informed Super League that Gemma Carter is infectious?
She's like the COVID, isn't she? That's the problem. So we'll go with Salford just to please her and Phil Clark. To win that one. That's followed by the Henry Paul Trophy, Wakefield Trinity versus Wigan Warriors.
That's another, again, Wigan like to slow the ball down. They're not going to be able to do that. Now, how much training you can do in advance of these change of rules, I'm not sure. There was a question mark as well about Wigan's creativity. Clearly, Bevan French is going to be a doubly impressive asset than before we closed down, but their halfbacks are converted hookers, and I think you're going to need more than that under these new rules. As for Wakefield, again, you'll know better than me as to who might be in form, who is even in the frame for selection, and who perhaps isn't at training. I have genuinely no idea. I'll just go for Wigan because it's a shorter name.
Expert insight.
Yeah. One of the only things I wrote down on my phone is Wigan, Bevan French. So thanks for that, Phil. You've covered that point for me anyway. Yeah, because that I think with the new rules, it'll shine a little bit. But again, I have no idea who's fit, who's not, whether they're going to rotate squads and have a look at some younger players particularly with relegation going and things like that, and it's early days, you can have a look. So I don't know. Because they've looked after us in the past, Mr. Carter and his friends, I'll go Wakefield.
I have to, but Paul, you're first.
Wigan for me. Jackson Hastings, Bevan French, Jamie Foster's best mate. I think, players that will enjoy the new rules. They looked impressive pre-lockdown. Who knows how anyone's going to emerge from this lockdown. But I'm pretty confident in Wigan's ability over the next few months. I think they're going to be right up there, challenging for the title, and I think they'll start with a win.
Will Adrian Lamb have shaved? That's the question.
Yeah, I'm excited to find out. I don't think he can beat Robert Hicks.
You know what happens now is Zach Hardacre scores a hat-trick and everyone blames me now. But I'm going to blame Jamie Foster. He might score a hat-trick though, but Wakefield will win because we've got Tony Gigo now. So we've got our Gallic influence back.
Oh, yeah.
Liam Kay's come in. Tom Johnson's fit, I think. I'm not allowed anywhere near the ground. I'm on furlough, so I don't know. But I'll go for Wakefield anyway, because I always do. And the closing event, it's been many a grand final, and many people have gone, oh, what bother watching this one then? But it is Resurgent Leeds 15-minute wonders versus St Helens, the champions, Phil. You must be looking forward to this one.
Game of the round, because both of these teams have played, they've experienced the new rules, whatever match fitness, hardness you need, they've both got it. So I can't wait for this. I think both of them have a confidence about them. Leeds clearly from coming back from a position where they shouldn't have been able to. Saints with just the way that they played. They were joy to watch, absolutely. And the mobility amongst the forwards, the fact that James Roby's back and fully fit. Aaron Smith is a great player, and that combination really works against Brad Dwyer and Cruz Leeming. I can't pick a winner on this because I'm just looking forward to seeing it. I hope that whoever watches on Sky, who isn't an aficionado of the game, sees something like they saw to end Sunday this week. Toss of a coin, could go down to a golden point, field goal, could be a blowout one way or the other. But two teams that love to play under the old rules. This gives them more occasion to do it. So a high-scoring thriller.
I'll go Saints. Just, I think Saints' game management, if they get a roll on early on, I can't see Leeds getting back into the game. I think like they did the weekend. I don't think Saints would let them back in if Saints got ahead by even 12, 18 points. I think they would show the game up at that point. And I hope to see. Obviously, he was ill at the weekend. Matty Lees, I think. Matty Lees is a great player, and we had him luckily on dual reg at Sheffield for a few games. I think 8 games we had him for, and he was up and coming then sort of 2 years ago, but he's coming into his own now. So I hope to see Matty progress at the weekend as well. But yeah, I'll go Saints.
Yeah, Phil can't pick a winner. I can. I think St Helens for me. I was impressed by them against Catalans. Leeds, I certainly wasn't impressed for 65 minutes. If they play like anything like that against St Helens, then no chance. They're not coming back from 26-10 down or 26-6 down against St Helens, that's for sure. Yeah, for me, I think Leeds will be better than they were. And it could be an entertaining game, but I'm fairly confident in St Helens. So get your money on Leeds right now.
Yeah.
Luke Gale drop goal in Golden Point. No, I'm going to go for Saints. That's it. Before the programme, Liam sent me a message. How long will we be on for? And I said, usually about 60 to 80 minutes. We've done over an hour and a half, so that's good. Got that wrong again. Liam, thank you very much for your time. Can't say best luck for the rest of the season because it doesn't exist, but congratulations on retaining the 1895 Cup.
I've actually sent an email to the RFL asking for it back. I want it back already. It's with the RFL for engraving. So now it's not there. That was my first email. Say, can we have it back, please? With our name now on it. So that'll be on its way back to Sheffield very shortly. Well,
if it's anything like the Yorkshire Cup, it'll end up in Huddersfield. So make sure you get that back. We know what they're like. I'm joking.
Open top bus tour when that comes back.
Yeah, when you're allowed. Paul, thank you very much for joining us. Enjoy, I don't know, enjoy whatever you're doing. Just
writing a column.
The furlough life.
I do need to do that very quickly. I've done half of it already, boss. It'll be on the way shortly. But yeah, no, it's been an honour to be on again. I mean, I've got nothing else to do, so.
So I wrote loads of words this month, so if Phil gets desperate, he can just leave them all in, apart from the libelous bits. Phil, thank you. Magazine just about ready to go to print then?
Goes to print on Sunday, so if Leeds and St Helens could manage not to go to Golden Point, that would be quite an advantage.
I've promised myself I'm going to write a book now, which means I have to do it, but not that anyone will buy it. But I might get it started at some point during furlough, since I was going to do a quiz book and that never got started anyway. Thank you very much, you three, for your time. Thanks for listening. We'll be back again next week, probably, because there'll be 5 more games in Super League to talk about here on 4020 Not Live.